Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Duval Dive. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game.
And I'm Travis Holmes with BigCatCountry.com.
And you're listening to this thing on the Believe Podcast Network. Duval Divers, welcome in. Listen, before we get too far down the line, and I can tell you, regular life today in particular, each of us uniquely, for me and my personal champion, was its own personal challenge. But we love coming out here to talk to you guys here, talking ball, talking Jaguars. And there are some that we want to throw some shouts at. These are dudes that whether we're in the chat or not, you guys are in the chat making comments and keeping us rolling here too. Just some quick shouts to some of our top commenters here in the building. Radius, of course, opens the chat all too often and runs off to do what he needs to do, but nonetheless, props to him. Of course, PT phone home in your hearts, but Preston Tibbs, if you're going by his gunman name here, Preston in the comments as well, the regular piece. Zenithrax in the room, and of course, BJ Brown taking time rolling in all the money he won from the Jags last year. And of course, Daniel Kilkenny as well. Just some shouts for you. And of course, quick shouts to our channel members as well for being involved with that. Please feel free to do the things with the liking and the subscribing and all of that. And hey, if you're feeling frisky, go ahead and become a channel member. That'll help us out and help us expand this thing as we take care of business and doing all the above. So just a quick shout to make sure I remember to thank you all, Duval, and you diving out there, regardless of the fact that I'm actually technically a member of the faithful. I have faithfully said that you guys have helped us keep going. That being said, Travis, I know we had a lot of talk about a new receiver acquisition, but what happened was the Seahawks matched the tender that was put out by the Jags for Jake Bobo. I was frustrated by this. I have to say, I was looking forward to the concept of this as it would be a story going through the year for the Jags, and that did not happen, Travis.
I mean, but can we be honest? Like, can we be honest? Because we're very rarely honest. And I say we, well, not we, not me and you, the general media, we're very rarely honest about these things, and we can call a spade. It was a great signing and a great opportunity, a great prospect, whatever you want to call it. Great action at a time when the Jacksonville Jaguars had very little action. It was a good break in the action at the end of the day. That's all it really was. And it didn't work out. And we talked about it on the Jake Bobo pod. It was a $1 million difference at its core. At the end of the day, it was the difference between a $4.5 million contract and a $3.5 million contract as far as the guarantees are concerned, because he is not going to be able to realistically get those incentives in Seattle. So we knew that's what it was from the Seattle perspective. Whether or not he's on the roster at year two, they're going to just pay him another $1 million. It is what it is for the most part. So great deal for him. He gets to stay in Seattle in an offense that he was already playing in, but also on the negative side, he's going to stay in Seattle offense that's consistently reduced the amount of snaps that he's gotten on offense the past 3 years straight. So it is what it is. He's not going to be in Jacksonville, but it was a good break in the action because they just had nothing else going on. It was Chris Rodriguez and nothing else. Just get the other guys back.
Let's not to make too little of New Tank Bigsby over there. Okay, I said what I said, Travis. But and listen, who knew that staying with the defending world champion is something that could keep somebody from going across the country. No, I get it. There's things like that you could do.
He says media rarely honest. No, of course not.
Whatever do you mean? Why you gotta be all real like that? No.
We try our best to play. We try our best to give you guys both sides of the fence, both whether it's the actual media narrative and kind of the feelings there, or the fan narrative, and try to so we can balance both sides of the conversation. And even the ball knowing, film watching, analytical part of the narrative also, because that's not always from the media side.
That's correct. And speaking of fans and news narratives uniting, seeing the evidence of the thumbnail and the title and all this, Robertson here. So we're trading up for Rodriguez. I like that a lot. I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I think there's enough truth in it to where I'm like, you got that from the thumbnail and the description and all of that. And Robert, this is props. I'm not hating. I'm appreciating. I like that comment has materialized. from that. Before we get started here to the next thing too, real quick, storm the desert, 46 hours of work since Monday, but willing to enjoy an adult beverage and some Duval dive before bed. Let's go. By the way, I gotta say, storm confusing for me because I'm going to start covering the Orlando storm this weekend. It's a whole thing. Go ahead, Travis.
No, I'm just saying if you going to bed without getting some Duval dive, I mean, you're slipping out, man. It's like that and edible. That's it.
I'm not even going to pretend to match that. Well said there, champion. And of course, Tapa in the comments as well. Good to see you, Tapa. Yeah, let's get to it. Speaking of people with whom we like to hear from, DG doing the thing again, dropping the stats. The Jaguars' biggest needs he has here. I assume this was a tweet, Travis?
Yeah. It's from his Action Sports Jats article that from like a month ago. Dan put it out. If you haven't seen Dan's work over Action Sports Jats, stop wasting your time and obviously do that. Big Cat Country, Action Sports Jats. Let's get it on.
Damn, how many bells you want, Travis? Anyways, yeah. These biggest needs, defensive tackles been talked about on this show aplenty. He mentioned that at that position, they're 23rd in pressure percentage and 24th in pass rush win rate, which not great, Bob. So, but we've talked about that enough. What I think kind of goes under the radar that we haven't talked about enough, except in potential prospects, and I think I'm going to word it the way you worded it. The damn GM's talking about that. Everybody else talking about defensive tackle. The 17th in pressure percentage for the edge rush last season, 18th in pass rush win percentage. And by the way, they're losing Smoot and Ogba, something we're definitely not talking about, and I think is the genesis of this conversation and episode today, right, Travis?
Right. And I thought that's funny because, again, letting you guys a little bit behind the curtain of my and Kyle's conversations offline is like, hey, nah, man, why the hell is no one talking about the fact that the Jaguars were reportedly in on the Maxx Crosby, or at least trying to, contact them, trying to figure out what the price is, kind of just feeling it out and figuring that out, whether or not they can put together a trade on the Maxx Crosby situation. Same situation on the Trey Hendrickson situation. If you believe the rumors, if you truly believe what the streets are saying, like the streets are always talking. And I understand this is lion season. I get that. But at the end of the point, there you go. But at the end of the day, if you believe the rumors on what the streets are saying, then you have to say the Jacksonville Jaguars were reportedly interested in raising the ceiling, not just the floor, not just looking for a third pass rushing defensive end, but raising the ceiling on who their top defensive end is on this roster. Why is nobody talking about that? That's it's such a big thing because it didn't happen. I get that it didn't happen, but the fact of the matter is it was reportedly something that was happening. So why are we only talking about the defensive tackle conversation? Like that's the only piece of this.
I think that's in line with, because most of it is fed that way. And let's be honest, the conversation, I think you've said it best. Just this, and granted, who am I to talk? I am not a card-carrying member of the Duval Devout, but I've seen your fellow Devout Travis panic at the fact that this team might be a defensive tackle away for all intents and purposes. And I don't think that's the silliest statement in the world, but because let's be honest, if that goes in there and they're in there defensively, getting to the quarterback on a more regular basis, I'm not saying that this makes the defense perfect, but it does make things rather juicy as to what the prospects of what they're doing, especially in a division where quarterbacks get rather skittish rather fast unless your name is one Trevor Lawrence.
But can I make the opposite argument? And I want to be clear in saying this.
I intended you to.
I don't know 100%. I will never know 100% with 100% certainty that the Jacksonville Jaguars had the idea of signing either a Trey Hendrickson or Maxx Crosby or whoever as a top, defensive end option for the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2026, while also not keeping Travon Walker or Josh Hines-Allen on the roster. I don't know that, and you will never know that. You don't know if they just were doing that because Maxx Crosby was going to be better at the end of the year and they'll have a third guy. You will never know that. You don't know if they were looking for waves of guys like the Seattle Seahawks. I mentioned the Seattle because everybody keeps saying like that's like the bookmark for, or that's the blueprint for what everyone kind of wants this offseason. They needed waves of guys who can continue hitting offensive linemen in the face. I get that. Well, sorry. Well, looking at that, then Seattle, they had Leonard Williams. They got Brian Murphy. They got DeMarcus Lawrence, and they had Jaron Reed. Jaron Reed is basically Devon Hamilton for that defense. Like, he's a run-stopping guy who doesn't give you very much on the pass rushing side of things. Well, if they can do it with those guys, and Eric Armstead, which is misspelled, but Eric Armstead at the start of the year was top 3 in sacks in the NFL before the bye week. How come the Jaguars could not do the same thing? Because they still weren't getting to the quarterback to that level in the first half of the year. How come Seattle can do it, but Jaguars cannot? You have to then start asking the question, are they missing something? Despite Josh Hines-Allen being good, despite Travon Walker being good, and again, this is before Travon Walker's injury. Are they missing something that can't be set on the lap of an Eric Armstead or on the lap of a Devon Hamilton? Because that's a reasonable question that should probably be asked if the Jacksonville Jaguars are kicking the tires on a Trey Hendrickson or on a Maxx Crosby, right? Like, that's where I feel like the question should be asked.
Well, and the answer, some tangent of it that you have to make at some point, Travis, is you're looking at Maxx Crosby and Trey Hendrickson with some concept to add a rotation in from Travon Walker. Again, let's be careful. I'm not saying 61% of snaps. I know that number still makes me bitter about what Ryan Nielsen did with Eric Armstead at defensive end. It's not going to go away. But there's going to be enough where you have enough of a rotation where Armstead is getting that load management that we've talked about trying to enact ever since he got here 2 years ago. Forget last year, right? Because he didn't get here last year. He got here 2 years ago. We had made the point on the Duval dive, and I think it was me even that said it, that some sort of load management needs to exist. So maybe getting a pass rusher provides more opportunity for Walker to kick inside. I know that BJ Green is in waiting to get involved, maybe potentially there too. I don't know, but I think there's something in there over and above. Maybe you get a UDFA or a late draft pick involved as well. Like, I know Jamal St. Cyr came in here and had all sorts of rare beef that could be found with some tenderizing, perhaps. I don't know.
It's just the thing that the Jacksonville Jaguars are now going to be entering the third straight. Maybe is it third straight or fourth straight? I'm not even sure. I'm losing track at this point. Seasons where they don't have a third edge. They just don't have one on the roster that you reasonably know that you are going to get some great production out of. So we can start off just talking about
Smoot. You were banging the table that Smoot was the key, dog. What's up?
As a potential low risk, buy low option, absolutely. And it didn't work out, and that stinks, but it is what it is. So,
are you making the Arden Key reference with that 4 years ago thing?
Basically, since Arden Key, they have not had one. So then, if you want to make that argument that they were assigning one of these guys to be that edge 3, I feel like that's probably not the case, but maybe so. Because in 2025, you had Travon Walker. He was really dang good stopping the run. Like, he was 9th in the NFL with his run stop rate per PFF. And he had a 10.5 or 10.5 pass rush rate on the season, where he was pretty much hobbled for much of the, after his injury. Josh Hines-Allen, on the other hand, I'll give him credit, 19.2. That's up there. 19.2, I'm trying to put that into perspective against the other guys. Dan put the stats out. Like, 19.2 is the pass rush win rate for Josh Hines-Allen in 2025. Trey Hendrickson was at 21.5%. If you're looking at the free agent market, Jalen Phillips was at 18.8, like, as the next guy in line. So Josh Hines-Allen would have been a top 2 guy in this free agent market right now. That was reasonably solid.
I'm getting an update in my headphones here. At least 2% of that 21% was at Walker Little's expense. Go ahead.
Oh, right. Trey Hendrickson, Jesus. Yeah. That's probably fair. But I also want to make sure I say, because folks always throw these stats out and it's like, oh yeah, that means it was great. But we got to have some real conversations, because the Jaguars also, on the positive side for Josh Hines-Allen and the positive side for Travon Walker, the Jaguars had the NFL's 7th fastest time to pressure. And that means that they were getting there quickly, reasonably, but again, they were facing other offenses who had the 2nd fastest time to throw in 2025. We talked about that for multiple weeks during the middle of the season, because veteran quarterbacks were just getting the ball out. The only team that was throwing the ball against defenses faster. The only team whose defense got the ball thrown against them faster was the Cleveland Browns with Tyson Campbell on the other side.
So you're talking about as an entire number, even in a world
as an entire number.
Yeah, for the average for the season, even in a world where one of the longest successful passers in Justin Herbert, who got crushed, by the way. This is an interesting concept, by the way. You're kind of giving me a eureka, so I'm saying this out loud. And then what is it? Geno was another one of the longer ones in the league.
Bingo. They played a lot of the ones.
Yeah, exactly. Despite both those two being present, you're telling me for the season they were the second fastest throwing. That's a pretty damn wild stat. And by the way, we hadn't even cited yet that I'm convinced for at least some choice games, the Carolina Panthers out the gate for one. I think there was more a what's his word, focus and an emphasis on pocket containment over pass rush to keep Young from doing what, would be most dangerous in that game for sure. And that's using his legs, right?
Right. There were a few games like that, like even the first Tennessee Titans game, where you could see that they weren't necessarily trying to get to the quarterback quickly, but they were trying to make sure they contain him so they can't run the ball. I get that. I'm here to have that conversation. I understand that there's nuance to this. And the Jaguars also on the positive side, because again, this is not a negative podcast. This is just an objective looking at this, trying to be clear on both sides of the equation. Hey, they had the 10th best pressure rate when opposing quarterbacks held onto the ball for 2.5 seconds or longer in the league. That's not incredible, but it's definitely good. It's top half of the league. Yes, pressure man. But they did well moving quarterbacks off their spot at the time. If they're holding the ball past 2.5 seconds, they just had trouble getting quarterbacks to hold on to the ball 2.5 seconds. So again, that's the secondary issue. That's the scheme issue. We discussed that after the Buffalo game. So if you can't get up in folks' face, if you can't play man-to-man, if you can't press them to slow down the operation, or if you're forced to blitz a lot, which, again, there was a 5 or 6 game stretch in the middle of the season with Anthony Campanella, they just had to blitz because they couldn't get home at 4. Veteran quarterbacks are going to get the ball out. They're going to find those openings in the zones, and that was Jacksonville's core problem in 2025 from my perspective. Now, that's looking at Travon Walker and a little bit of Josh Hines-Allen. Now, Josh Hines-Allen's a much bigger conversation for me personally.
And we just so we got it all mentioned completely too. Walker was injured throughout the year. I think that's a worthwhile thing to point out. Yeah.
And obviously he wasn't the same when he's a power rusher who can't even grab guys for about a 3-week time frame to maneuver them. That's going to impact your ability to win on these pass rushes when, again, you can't even grab onto a guy with your one hand. But with the Josh Hines-Allen contract, that's a different conversation because it seems highly unlikely that the Jacksonville Jaguars would have been interested in moving off of a Josh Hines-Allen. I mean, before we even get into the guy, the captain of the defense, the actual player and the locker room guy and all of that, we can talk about the contract. The fact of the matter is, I'm sorry, that's the dead cap. My apologies. The contract. I mean, if you were to trade Josh Hines-Allen even with a post 6-1 designation, a post June 1st designation, you're still taking a $15 million dead cap this year. That's not bad. That's less than the Tyson Campbell dead cap. Whatever. That's fine.
That's fair.
But a $42 million dead cap in 2027 is pretty ridiculous. So I've heard people talk about this. That's a big number. There's no way you can make that not be a big number.
Isn't that like Russell Wilson high? 42 million?
I had a feeling you would ask that question. So, I want to put this in comparisons. When the Giants moved off of Leonard Williams back in 2023, they had a dead cap on him of $26 million, but the salary cap was lower at that time. So that'd be the equivalent, if you want to just say percentage of the cap, it's the equivalent of $35 million today. Okay. If we're looking at non-quarterbacks, so I think it was obviously highly unlikely that they were shopping Hines-Allen or Walker, basically just based on that when they were sniffing around Maxx, Crosby, Trey, Hendrickson, and all of that. But I do question if they just saw a really weak 3-tech defensive tackle class and the really weak defensive tackle free agent market at the same time and just thought, hey, man, this is the only way we're going to be able to build our quote unquote Seattle Seahawks waves upon waves defensive line by getting another dominant guy, and we'll just figure out how to deploy them the best on pass rushing downs.
Wait a minute. Are you implying that a team that is already moving Travis Hunter around to play different positions wouldn't be inclined to do so with Travon Walker as well? That is asinine, Travis. I am shocked and appalled you would intimate any of that.
No, but I did want to make sure, because someone I'm close with told me that I argue my points in a fashion where it doesn't give room to breathe for the opposite opposing opinion. So this podcast and this conversation was me taking a beat and saying, you know what? People said I'm crazy for thinking that the Jacksonville Jaguars would never trade Josh Hines-Allen. Like, that just couldn't happen. So you know what? I want to give it breath. I want to give it a beat. I'm going to give it a second, and I want to evaluate it like I would if they wanted to make that crazy decision, that wild, that freaking bold decision to do that. What in the world would it look like? And again, you're talking about a guy, a Jacksonville Jaguar, who is in 2025 was fourth in turnovers caused by penalties with caused by pressures. With fourth in the NFL with quarterback pressures with 80, sixth in the NFL in quick quarterback pressures, which is those quarterback pressures under 3 seconds. And he had 27 of those in 2025. And that's, again, against all linebackers, including outside linebackers, defensive ends, and defensive tackles. So he's up there.
All defensive front players. So that includes Myles Garrett just as much as it includes Byron Murphy or Jalen Carter. That's crazy.
Yes. So he did really freaking well in 2025, despite the fact that most people still feel like I just needed to see more, because folks aren't going to be happy unless he is Myles Garrett. We kind of know that already.
People who aren't going to be happy unless the sack column says something, right?
True. That's fair.
They completely leave out the fact that they had a linebacker who was among the leaders in interceptions. You think maybe a high pressure rate might have something to do with that. But what do I know? I'm just a student of the game, Travis.
But it's fair. But the opposite side of that equation, or that conversation, is what we were talking about earlier, as far as the ability to have ways upon ways of guys sometimes can be influenced by the guys who are on the inside of that defensive line, that Eric Armstead, that Devon Hamilton. And everybody's pointing at Devon Hamilton. He doesn't give us anything. So the Seahawks had a guy, Jaran Reed, who wasn't giving them much of anything in the pass rush, and somehow they still found a way to have three guys who were incredible sacking the quarterback. Eventually, you do have to look at the scheme, and eventually you do have to look at the players also themselves. Josh Hines-Allen, Travon Walker, like, they have a role to play in this. And in the 2025 season, per NFL Researcher on X, Josh Hines-Allen, really dang good. Again, when blocked one-on-one, he was fourth in the NFL with pressures, with quarterback pressures when blocked one-on-one in the 2025 season. However, he didn't make the top 15, I actually believe, when chipped or double teamed in 2025. So basically, when they gave him that extra attention, he wasn't able to kind of power his way through that, if that makes any sense, and get that pressure. But he's good if you can give him one-on-one, which means you probably, to have that guy have success, you're going to need to have that third defensive lineman just to try to not be able to give the extra attention to Hines-Allen, if that makes any kind of sense. And that kind of sucks, because he is being paid like a top guy. That's a weird balancing act, if that makes sense. So because of that, I can see an argument for someone to say, hey man, this dude's really dang good, but is he good enough to be paid like one of these guys who can take on a double team and still win? Or is he just good enough to give you the wins when you have other great guys around him to keep him clean?
Well, and
that's a hard conversation.
Yeah, there's a fine line between a double team and a chip, right? Like, if they're just sending a fullback out, like if, the proverbial Josh Allen in practice, if he's just stymied facing Anton by just sending LeQuint at him, that's a problem. However, because the interior isn't all that great and they can maybe one-on-one a defensive tackle, is he dealing with, on that side, we'll say Wyatt Milam just to stir things up. But is this a Wyatt Milam and Anton Harrison double team in practice, or is he just getting chipped by LeQuint or Brenton Strange? Because again, we made this point, and I think this is the real reason why people are this paranoid about the defensive tackle spot. It's not just the pass rush numbers, but knowing that Eric Armstead is getting older, knowing that him making it 17 games and then a playoff run as well for another extra set of games might be tall for him at this point. And if that ends up tall and he's missing or he's playing less, there's nothing else in the cupboard to go to. But if there is, then maybe Josh Hines-Allen gets freed up, right? This is something we've seen happen so many times. Now, granted, Usi Umenyiora and Michael Strahan isn't the best example because even when Strahan retired, Umenyiora made a difference. But that wasn't always the case. I see, this is so true that I forget the guy that was on the other side of Umenyiora when he was still in Chicago, if I remember correctly. That makes my point entirely. Because at one point they were good two twin edge pass rushers, but the other guy, you don't know his name anymore because it's been that long and I done forgot. So
no, well, the Daniel Kilkenny, which again, top commenter when we're not live, which I love you guys. Like it doesn't matter if it's a live pod, doesn't matter if it's on demand, on review. You guys are locked in, and we appreciate you. Dan says, I agree that we need another interior defensive lineman, but Armstead had 5.5 quarterback sacks, and 7 other tackles for a loss equals 12.5 sacks and tackles for a loss. Yes, until you remember that he also had 5 of those sacks, I believe, by week 9 of the season, which is the week after the bye week, and it was dead after that, after his injury also. So I'm back and forth on that. Like it was a good season as far as sacks are concerned, but you also just can't get to the easiest part of your schedule and just have it cut off and just cut the faucet off. Like there's got to be some give and take there. But to circle back, I said I was going to give the conversation some breath because I kept cutting people off when they would say that Jaguars are going to trade Josh Hines-Allen and whatever else. Like they're going to trade Travon Walker because, you know, they're on the last year of his contract and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but everything that they tell me is just not going, that says that's just not going to happen. So, and I couldn't see that happening. But then they have the same conversation about the Josh Hines-Allen and the cap and his contract and everything else. And I'm like, I mean, you mean the same GM who's already told you he's going to be bold, the same GM that cut Gabe Davis with all that dead cap that was going to be there, the same GM that cut Tyson Campbell that had like a $30 million overall dead cap situation of $19 million of that falling in the second year after he's no longer on the team. That's if the same Jacksonville Jaguars, you know, leadership group that has them 7th in the NFL right now in overall dead cap money while also having a clean book next year. You can't just objectively say it's no chance of it happening. It just seems highly unlikely. But I wanted to give folks a quick history lesson here, if you don't mind, just to set the table.
I'll tell you. So you want to do that, or you want to hit some comments, man? Because they're flying in, and we haven't touched them yet.
All right, you know that's fair. I want to make sure I give the breadth for this Josh Hines-Allen comment and or argument that they were trying to trade him. So you know what? I'll do that after we talk about some comments.
All right, let's get some comments in, man. And first of all, Tapa, listen, I agree with you wholeheartedly here. Tapa mentions in the comments, Tony Wiggs of Locked On Jaguars. Shout to Wiggs, of course, and of course, fellow Locked On talent as well. I'm on Locked On UCF myself. Made interesting suggestions about possibly trading into the first round for the Seahawks 32nd pick. Yeah, he also mentioned the Seahawks only having 4 picks. Yeah, of course, it's absolutely on the table. You know, it's going to be about if the BPA that they want, they think is going to fall there. Of course, I think Stones would pull the trigger, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good opinion. It's a good option. Like Florida Made Topper says, yeah, if Peter Woods falls to the 32nd pick, make the call to Seattle. Hell, if Caleb Banks falls to 32, make that same phone call. Like, we good. Either one, defensive tackle, need and guy. Right guy.
That does it for sure. A better pass rush, according to Storm, makes your players in coverage job way more manageable. I think that's a great point. So are you intimating, Storm, that if the pass rush was better at all facets of the line, that Devin Lloyd would have had more interceptions?
I would argue that this is true with context, with an asterisk, because it depends on the type of defensive backs you have. Like I still think the Jacksonville Jaguars in the 2025 season didn't have a lot of guys who can get in that press man alignment and run with guys, and because of that, they gave up a lot of free yardage underneath. I mean, the Buffalo game was a prime example. They just could not stand. They could not get 1 yard off the line of scrimmage and just stop these guys from doing these screens over and over and over and over and over. And because of that, they couldn't give their defensive line time to even get home. And that's why I say that 2.5 second mark is the key. If you can just slow the receivers down for 2.5 seconds, let your defensive line get home, you might be all right. I mean, that's the part of the defensive backfield that needs to be changed up a little bit. And no one's really talking about that piece either. They're just like, we got Monteric, we're good. We got Jordan, we're good. We got all the guys we had already, we're good. And I'm like,
good,
not necessarily.
Yeah, and I think that transitioned nicely here to this comment that Tapa makes in retort to Storm the Desert. This fan base is split when it comes to the defense. Some say the pass rush is the problem. Others say the secondary is the problem. I'll even add this element too. The more I'm reminded about the short pass, short time to release rather, I feel like this was a dinner secondary throughout the season. I've made this point before. We need to wake up a little earlier, perhaps, and think about them being a little bit more of a breakfast secondary. I don't know if that means a lunch secondary is the perfect place to be, but I'm wondering if perhaps tighter coverage maybe is the way you do it. I don't know. You see, I'm treading carefully, stepping into here because between that comment and this one as well, by Ben.
Pinterest price.
Yeah, great point, which leads me to ask, why do our corners play 10 yards off the ball? And at some point, too, we have to acknowledge towards the end of the season, for sure, there are a butt ton of injuries. I don't think anybody intended for Monteric to play outside corner that often in this defense.
I'm going to say this in the best way that I can because I know many people in Jacksonville don't generally look at other NFL teams. I'm 100% sure of that. I'm aware of it because I talked to enough people to kind of get that opinion based on individual conversations with many people in the Duval about fan base. But you look at the Seattle Seahawks, because we looked at the Seattle Seahawks a lot throughout the season. We looked at every game of theirs before the Jaguars played them, because that was part of our film review, just preparing for this podcast and preparing for the article write-ups on bigcatcountry.com. And
shouts to Marcus Ogden as well. He helped us in depth there too, Locked On Jaguars.
Right. And that's where I'm like, we watched the Seattle Seahawks not have a great secondary, and we watched them play a lot of off coverage. They played a lot of cover 6, a lot of cover 8, just like the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they didn't have the greatest secondary, but they found a way to have one of the better passing defenses in the NFL while also having a top 5 run stopping defense at the same time. Because yes, that defensive line was that dang good, but also those limitations didn't become prevalent because the defensive line got home just in time. And it was a mixture of them having the right scheme, confusing quarterbacks and everything else, but also the defensive line still getting there with enough time so folks couldn't kind of figure it out. The Jaguars got figured out on numerous occasions, and then they kind of countered and tried to figure it out, how to play better towards the end of the season. But you can't get around just having guys when the other team knows my guys are better than your guys, or my guys are faster than your defenders, and you're not going to be able to play us man to man. And again, that's the Buffalo game all over again.
Which I find interesting, that maybe they were able to beat them in the air if they were air quotes slower as a defensive back group. I feel like these high stats you're talking about stopping the run was them attempting to do it horizontally in the run game and failing. So that's a very interesting thing to observe there from that perspective.
So when we talked to Bo Crouch about the Seattle Seahawks, like he kept saying, no, they're going to give you the 5-yard throw, and they're going to give you the 5-yard throw all the way down the field. And they're going to just play a lot of cover 2, which is cover 6 and cover 8 is basically just variations of the cover 4, cover 2, depending on how you want to categorize it. Just of it being is
waiting zones, right?
They're just, and they're making you nickel and dime them down the field the whole way. And they know you won't. Eventually, you're going to make the mistake of trying to hold on to the ball. They're going to sack you. That's where the Jaguars, that one piece, when they hold on to the ball, how consistent are the Jaguars going to be able to get home is where the conversation then goes.
And that's an analytics play, actually. What do you mean, Kyle? Yes, an analytics play, in that it's easier to score touchdowns when you have fewer opportunities to make mistakes. If I throw one bomb to BTJ for 79 yards and get a touchdown, there's no other mistakes on that drive I could possibly make. However, if I am daring you to hold the ball for 10 plus minutes for 12 plays, the chances of you, and think about it too, by the way, if you're playing against, let's say, it's even more augmented if you're playing against a Cam Ward or a CJ Stroud, or, quarterbacks that kind of fold when it's pressure time lately, as we've seen. The more opportunities they have to throw, Geno Smith, the more opportunities you have to screw up, you just might. There's a thought process to that, I think. Hey, okay, you don't like those examples? Drake May. The more opportunities you gave Drake May to screw up, and he would. Super Bowl quarterback, Mike Tail. Anyways, I said what I said.
Wow. And Ben again says, I love Josh Hines-Allen, but he's making a lot of money with very little production, which I'm not sure if that's necessarily accurate, but I understand the thought. I understand the feeling coming from the fan base, if that makes sense.
I paid for
sacks.
Give me sacks. That's what he's saying.
That's it.
Whether it's right or wrong.
They want sacks.
It's a philosophy. It's not that it's right or wrong. That's the thing they're saying, I think. Yeah.
17 sacks.
Robert, that was perfect. I know you didn't just make that comment a bit ago. I know it took us a while to get to it, but boy, did it land the plane very nicely. What I was trying to say.
But then on the Jacksonville Jaguars, what was his Reddit page? No study responded. Like, why I think. Oh yeah, it's been Reddit. Yeah, I've been lurking in there for a minute.
Yeah, but I just don't think we've had one on the show before. I'll give that a bell.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yes. Why I think we need edge help. In the 7 games, the Jaguars led on the opponent's last possession with the chance to tie or win. The opponent was able to score in 5 of the 7 games. We were 4-3 in those games, basically when the offense didn't come back and win the other one.
That is a bone-crushing stat. Damn.
Because the one was Kansas City.
No, hold on, real quick. How you got a stat like that and your name is no study? I don't think so, Chief. Go ahead, Travis. I just had to point that out.
It's fair, but again, that's not a Josh Allen specific stat. It's just saying that maybe your answer is not the 2 edges that we all are just bookmarking as the end all be all in this roster. So again, back to that history lesson I told you we are gonna give you 15 minutes ago.
It's time. Let's go.
All right. In 2021, James Gladstone was the director of scouting and strategy for the Los Angeles Rams. That was when they traded Jared Goff to the Detroit Lions, not because he wasn't a good player, not because he wasn't a good quarterback, because he wasn't the player that they were looking for. That's being very clear. I want to make sure we write that line in the sand so you can bookmark that for a second. Now, they got back Matt Stafford in that trade. Now, we're talking about Maxx Crosby. We're talking about Trey Hendrickson and saying, hey, these are some guys who close. They close the deal. They get it done. Mm-hmm. And if there was an argument to be made from the fan base, you'd be like, well, again, that contract, that money, blah, 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 blah. But no, one of the costs of that Matt Stafford, Jared Goff trade was that they incurred a $22.2 million dead cap hit in that trade, which at that time in the NFL history was the single largest dead cap charge for any one player in NFL history. So, like, if you want to put that in context, James Gladstone is on that staff. He's the director of scouting and strategy. When they make this bold behind move, I'm only pointing out that it's not a crazy argument to make that the salary cap was $182 million at that time. So if you want to put that in today's dollars with today's salary cap, that basically be like a $38 million dead cap that they took to get Matt Stafford on because he was the guy that they wanted at quarterback. It wasn't about the other guy not being great or not being good. It was about the fact that he wasn't great. And they were going to pay somebody that money. They were going to pay somebody that money to be great, not good. So they took a $38 million dead cap hit to get a good quarterback off their roster so they could get a great one on their roster. But they were only able to do that because they had clean books outside of that. And what do I mean by clean books? Like, wait, where's the dead cap? There we go. So, like, the Jaguars obviously don't have a clean books right now. And by clean books, I mean they have the $53 million in dead cap right now in 2026. But in 2027, right now, they have $0 in dead cap money from these contracts that Trent Baalke initially signed or the contracts that they took on, like a Greg Newsome, to get Tyson Campbell off the books, right? That's where we are right now. But outside of that large transaction for Matt Stafford, or for Jared Goff, I should say, well, the Jaguars are kind of in a similar situation right now. They have a clean book in 2027, they can do what they want to do. They can build this thing in the perfect way. They can reset the season if they wanted to apply a big dead cap hit next year, and it still be less money than they have in dead cap right now on their roster, if that was like the only thing that they did next season. So it's not a wild thing, as wild as it feels. If you look at the person we're talking about in James Gladstone, who He clearly lets us know at every opportunity, at every opportunity he has, that when he has an opportunity to do something bold, he's going to take.
One of the trademarks of our leadership group is that when there's an opportunity to be bold, we won't flinch.
You got it.
You were setting it up so good, Travis. I already had my finger on the video. I'm sorry.
So honestly, they have the option to do both right now. Like, they have the option to either fully reset this thing, and if they didn't want this guy because they just wanted someone who was great to pay that same money to, they could. Or if they just chose to just draft away and just kind of wait to just be heavy in free agency next year, they could also do that. They have the freedom and the options to do all these things. So I think it would be wrong for us, or probably a little bit egotistical or cocky, or just, we think we know a little too much if we assume that they couldn't do it simply because of something silly like money, because they've shown us that that's not the case.
Here's the thing, though, and this is the reason why I more leaned into the never, because everything you said is true, and in a world where James Gladstone exists, you better write it in pencil. We've said that last week here on The Dive. I don't know that other teams that would need him and feel like they're a Josh Hines-Allen away would take that contract on.
But the Jaguars have, again, if you're talking about the Jaguars already having that level of dead cap, I don't see why someone wouldn't take that on, because the Jaguars are going to be eating a good portion of that cap.
Yeah, but who do the Jets have?
Josh Hines-Allen right now could probably get a 1 and a 2 bare minimum.
Yeah, but
that's Crosby got 2 1s.
But who? I mean, okay, maybe the Jags would want the Jets trade. I'm making fun of the Jets. This is what I'm doing. No,
and again, I'm not promoting that. That should be what they do. I'm only giving real breath and real conversation to the fact that folks that keep saying that was what the plan was going to be. And if I wanted to be real about that and just say, I think you're wrong, and we're not going to talk about it, then I don't think that's right to do to that half of the fan base also. So I just want to evaluate what that looks like.
What I always took it as you were saying is, we don't necessarily think that it being the plan happens. I think they just, in that instance, it would kind of them stumbling into the right deal. And listen, this is the ridiculous just called, concept, make some ridiculous deal and see if they throw it back. I think I'm representing Gabriel Iglesias here. Hey, ridiculous just called, make the trade,
Well, the Jaguars last year, they had $85 million in dead cap early in the season. They're projected to have, the 7th most dead cap this year at $53 million. So they're either going to have 0 dead cap, as they currently have right now for 2027, or they could have anywhere, if that were to trade, that were to truly happen, they would have like $42 million in dead cap this year, and they would still have less dead cap than they have this year from those old Trent Baalke contracts, because they're trying to clean their cap and start their roster in the way that they want to start it.
Cal Jaguars liking how you're working tonight. Travis is fired up tonight, it says in the comments here.
Some people have been ready to get Josh Hines-Allen off this roster, so they're probably happy. Like, Travis is fired up. I'm just trying to make sure we have real conversations on both sides of the line. That's all.
Hey, listen, I'm poking the bear too, man. I'm participating in this thought exercise. That's all that's happening here. You know what gets Travis excited?
Yeah, man.
Ball knowing. That's what gets him excited. Damn it. That's all that's happening here. You do all divers in these comments, ball know it. Man, listen, first of all, then Tapa comes in off the top rope, giving me Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney as examples of defensive ends that could operate independently because they were both that good. Right here in the AFC South division, I think they're worthy of mention that you want, that to happen with your guys here in Walker and Hines-Allen for sure. And there's a lot going on.
But we have a few different views.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like we have a lot of options as far as the draft, because again, this is a draft and develop team. We know that. We know this team is probably, if they're going to result in having a better pass rush situation, it's going to be because they drafted their way out of the Trent Baalke mess. Like, that's what it's going to have to be. Right.
Before you jump into that, here's a question here that I want to get answered. And one of our channel members, Reyes, is in here. This is definitely my lack of understanding when it comes to dead cap. Why does Campbell stay on the Jags dead cap when he was traded, Travis?
So the Jaguars automatically, when they signed the contract, they gave him whatever number of guaranteed dollars and the signing bonus and his bonuses up front.
The
and
bonus
that
being the key there, Reyes, for the record.
Bonus. Go ahead. Right. So that automatically gets thrown. Your bonuses are applied to the books at the time the quote unquote services were rendered, we'll say, which means that when you're no longer on the contract, even if you have those void years that take place after you're already gone, that automatically accelerates to the last year of the contract, or in this case, since it was after June 1st, it gets split between this season and the next season.
It's
the next season being 2026.
Yeah, you got it.
So the Jaguars end up wanting that split to make sure that took it that way. $19 million is going to be taking place in 2026, and that's not to say for Cleveland. If Tyson Campbell were cut today for Cleveland, they still have a $13 million dead cap. Also, we talked about that a week ago. So they still have their own money situation associated with that contract to figure out, but that's how that works basically. Pre-June 1st versus post-June 1st, the trade happened after June 1st, and thus it gets split across both seasons.
Yeah. So Reyes, there's your education there. It's a perfectly good question. That's one that took me a while to understand too, especially the part to when it comes of in the form of particular bonuses, they can amortize it and divide it up over the life of the contract.
In other words, they paid let's say they paid $100 million up front. I'm not saying that actually happened. I'm just trying to give a round number. Yeah. Just giving a round number. But that would get spread out on a year by year cap hit across, let's say, a 5-year contract, $20 million a year. Well, if he's no longer on the roster at year 3, then that last $40 million gets applied on that last season, or that split across those last 2 seasons he's no longer on the roster. That's the best way of saying it. They paid it up front, and it applies to every year throughout the contract unless he's no longer on the roster. Then it all just accelerates to that last year. That's where it is.
And Storm brings in another bone-crushing point here that I think it makes a lot of sense. Let's not forget that Trevor would have been the first quarterback in NFL history to have 3 fourth-quarter go-ahead drives in order for them to win against Buffalo had they held up throughout the end of that game as well.
Fans are happier with this defensive roster right now because it means that they don't have holes. But I don't necessarily know that I believe that the GM, that the head coach, that the defensive coordinator, position coaches, etc., are equally as happy with where these guys are or where these guys were moving into the second year in this system. Like if they're not developing, they're moving on with someone else who they're drafting and bringing in, a free agent that they're bringing in, because folks are mad at, like when we do mock drafts, I guess I'll use that as an example. And if I draft a cornerback early in the round, folks will be like, he doesn't have a clear path. I don't give a damn. I don't care that he doesn't have a clear path. The clear path is through a dude. That's literally the path. There's competition here. Like
the shortest distance between 2 points is through the dude in front of you on the roster. That's a damn. I'm having a moment here, Travis. I really like that. I like that a lot.
That's what it is. It's straight Marshawn Lynch all day in roster
development. If you just run through somebody's face, a lot of people ain't gonna be able to take that over and over and over and over and over again. They just not gonna want that.
Think there's a deeper metaphor there?
Run through a motherfucking face.
I wonder if LaQuint Allen wakes up every morning and watches that video.
But that's the whole philosophy. Is like, folks don't get comfortable with the guys that are on the roster. I don't want them comfortable. I want them waking up every day hungry as hell because they got to do breathing down their neck. And if there's no open spot on the roster, good. That just means that injuries happen. Other issues happen within guys getting suspended or whatever else, and you want to make sure you have the best talent and the best depth on your team. So let's figure out how we can get that in this Jacksonville Jaguars defensive line, secondary, etc., so that these guys are like in good positions when these injuries happen.
Doing this because the divers are having all sorts of conversations among themselves here, talking about these different 3 techniques. I've seen Woods and Banks's and Holton's name fall up and down these comments throughout the show tonight, Travis.
Well, I wanted to make sure we talked about the 3 techniques specifically because I keep seeing all the mock drafts where they'll draft 2 defensive tackles, and I'll be like, wait, but both of these defensive tackles are nose tackles. They're both 0/1 techniques. They're the big guys, the big mammoths, the Vita Veas, who soak up blocks, and they're great for a 3-4 nose tackle, but they're not necessarily great to be your 3 technique. Eric Armstead. They're more Devon Hamilton, less Eric Armstead, if that makes sense. They're not the right type of guy.
Since I mentioned Gabriel Iglesias, is this us talking about fluffy defensive tackles? Is that a good way to put that?
We're actually talking about the anti English is defensive tackle.
You said no
Anti-fluff. We're talking about the smaller guys. Yes, we're talking right now. We need the smaller guys like the Peter Woods, the Caleb Banks, the Grayson Halls. These are your guys. And the guys that I have starred here again: Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, Grayson Halton, Chris McLean, and Caleb Proctor are guys that I love. It's not to say that the team doesn't like the other guys, but these are the ones who are true 3-technique defensive tackles in the mold of your Eric Armstead, or the guys who's going to come in when you have Devon Hamilton off the field and you need another pass rush option that maybe plays that 3-technique or plays that defensive tackle spot, basically, that can give you a little bit more in the pass rush game. I say Chris McLean because I think he's one of like the last truly kind of proven pass rush options, like as far as defensive tackle, 3-tech is concerned. Caleb Proctor, we talked about him when we did the mock draft pod with Jamal. Yeah, he's a small school guy, but if you believe in the whole small school philosophy that they can still make the jump and everything else, like the Gladstone has shown, a lot of the guys that they end up drafting, they came from small schools and transferred to big schools like Jared Verse, and then they produced, and then they were like, all right, we're immediately drafting those kind of guys. I think that would be a guy on the Jacksonville Jaguars radar personally. So that's why I have him start also. Yeah, but these are your primary guys.
And no, I like the point you make about McClellan, but I'll say this about the smaller school guys too. And in my coverage of UCF with Locked Off on UCF and UCF Night Zone, my sources close to the athletic department there have made the observation that the better transfers are the guys that come from the smaller schools and then step in. Guys at the bigger schools don't necessarily have that same rough and tumble, I'm going to take you down factor. Taking nothing from a certain guy from Syracuse on this roster who is from a blue blood school and still will run through an MFer's face, shouts LaQuinn Allen. But, that's just a good observation to be made, especially when you got these 7th round / UDFA guys.
Yeah, man, that's it. So, but then you have the other conversation of like, if the Jaguars are interested in the edge 3 market, you got to ask the question, and why didn't they sign one of these other guys as their edge 3? They could have easily done that, right? They were absolutely kicking the tires on the Maxx Crosbys and the Trey Hendricksons, the top guys, but they didn't sign a edge 3. I guess they're going to just wait till after the draft and then figure it out from that point. Similar to last year when they end up signing Agba and Smoot, it's because if they missed on their guys, they're not able to get the guys that they had identified in the draft, and you can always circle back. So then that's what I'm kind of looking at that point. You got free agent options, which is kind of limited right now. It really is. Like, you got Calais Campbell out there. He's 39 years old, 6.5 sacks last year, and Spot Track has his market value, $10.9 million, $11 million for a 1-year deal. I mean, give him that De'Ami Brown, I guess. Maybe that's an option. You got Kristen Wilkins, which that's the one that nobody wants to touch, but everybody wants to talk about, right? He's 30 years old. He had 9 sacks back in the 2023 season. He only played 5 games last year. In the 2024 season due to his foot injury. And then the Raiders voided his contract after those 5 games due to something that seemed to happen in the locker room.
Right.
He wants to say out loud what the something was, but some kind of shenanigans. I don't know. But
sorry, my fault there.
But it just what it is. Adam Scheffler pointed out recently on the socials back, last week, that he fully intends on playing. Kristen Wilkins fully intends on playing this season. He's still rehabbing his foot injury, which is wild because again, that was middle of 2024. The last game that he played, early 2024. But so far, 26 teams in the NFL have reached out, and they're kind of waiting to see when he's going to be ready. So that's 26 teams of the 32 teams in the NFL. One of the Jaguars are one of those teams, bro.
And you can't coach size. That's the thing about it too. And listen, the mystique of Kristen Wilkins isn't lost on me. Like, I was hyping this dude up writing for the Dolphins Wire. Okay, that should tell you how long ago that was that he started showing flashes. Right. I think there's some there, and there's another famous player. I'm not saying Christian Wilkins is a Hall of Famer, but the player I'm mentioning was somebody who was on the Raiders for a bit and then basically got traded to an excellent legacy team for a pack of Skittles and some milk duds, aka a 4th round pick, and ended up being one of the most prolific number ones in one of the most prolific offenses. And I refer to Randy Moss. a piece. I can't take off the board, Travis, the possibility that Christian Wilkins has that kind of a bounce back.
I got you. Assuming health is always a rough one because the medicals always scare me. Even in the draft, I say the same thing. Medicals always scare me. And I honestly didn't know where you were going when you said the Randy Moss. I thought you were about to say Jacoby Myers for a second. It just threw me. It was very funny the way you
Jacoby Myers is not a Hall of Famer yet, sir. We got a while to go on
that.
The
way you built it up, it just threw me off. I was like, wait a minute, is he about to say what I think he's about to say? Oh, that's wild. But on the off chance,
what I do. No, go ahead.
No, but on the off chance that the Jaguars miss out on their guys, like in the draft, because you got to think about what the contingency plans are going to be. You still got guys like Joey Bosa out there, Cameron Jordan, Javion Clowney, like all those older guys who won't necessarily, they don't have a reason to sign right now. Like you just find out who has a need, who's going to then feel like they don't have a choice but to give you the bag. Joey Bosa's contract, evaluation
these are post-draft or even training camp.
Post-draft.
Yeah,
right.
Like in the meantime, they'll be working out and sitting on their couch, waiting for the phone to ring.
On that Aaron Rodgers game plan. That's it.
Yeah,
ain't going to no training camp. 31 years old, 37 years old, 33-year-olds. I mean, one guy, Joey Bosa, had 5 sacks last year. Cam Jordan had 10.5. Jadeveon Clowney had 8.5 sacks last year, and these guys are ranging from that $13 million range to again $6 million. So, like, if you do miss out your guys and you need a third guy, there you go.
Calais Campbell is damn near 40. You think he's trying to go through training camp? I'm just saying.
Of course not. Of course not. So yeah, he knows where he's gonna be already, unless something crazy happens. But yeah, those are your options at least. And again, we'll have to obviously evaluate everything, how the draft goes, because it's such a light draft at defensive tackle. The edge, I don't even think it's a very swamp draft as far as the edge class is concerned, honestly. So I don't know where they're going to get their guys unless they maybe reach. And I hate using that word because the Jaguars aren't in a position where they feel like they probably have to reach, especially not at edge.
See, here's what's odd about the term reach, Travis. And from what I keep hearing, and this is based off of, and I'm going to call it propaganda, not because I question you, it's just because it's lying season. You know this. But based on all the propaganda of draft things that are out there, what I see are I haven't seen a position that anybody feels like this draft is definitely strong on. Obviously, it's strongest in something, but this draft itself, I've not heard, oh, they're really strong at this position. Or if they do, maybe it's guard where you aren't going to pick it in the first round anyway. Then on top of that, and I really wish I remember the tweet. You flashed it on this show in the past, but I forget its author. Mentioned something about the fact that teams typically only give out 15 first-round grades and that this class doesn't even have that many. You get concerned about reach, Travis. I'm telling you, that might be the only option in a lot of cases if the depth is actually as bad as everyone would have you believe.
That's actually fair, especially since in the world of NIL, the draft classes have gotten a little bit shallower and shallower and shallower as guys continue staying back. 10 guys here, 15 guys here, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm with you there. This draft class, maybe 2027 might be different though. It's feeling like it might be different, but we could get to 2027 and it's totally different than what we thought it was going to be because fill in the blank guy got hurt, didn't come out. Somebody stayed in another year, which you didn't think because they had a down year, etc. It happens
because
every
college football is still adjusting, and this year in particular, I think we're going to get potentially what's the biggest hammer as guys suddenly realize, wait, I can still get paid. Cool,
That's it.
So I think that's the biggest part of it.
If I get a third round evaluation on myself and I can make that same money, $3 million, $4 million, and maybe even improve my draft stock in college, I'm going to stay in college another year.
And then not have to play in Cleveland. I'll stay in college another year.
That's also fair. So yeah, I mean, these guys are really just freaking on fire.
Oh, the comments are lit up, y'all. Like we're gonna have some reading material tonight. Does the Duval dive comments count as a bedtime story? Can I read this to the boy?
Oh man, Social Alky with a great question. Did anybody concerned that Caleb Banks and Mason Smith kind of had the same questions coming out?
I was gonna bring you that. I was curious what you think of that.
Jesus. I mean, I ain't never think about that one in that way. That's a rough question because I don't know that Caleb Banks necessarily has the weight fluctuation question as far as that's concerned. He has the injury problem, sure, but I don't know that folks have actually question his work ethic or anything along those lines.
Yeah, injury makes weight tough. And as somebody that's lived through this personally, like when I was playing semi-pro, at one point, I got in real good shape and I was in tight end shape. Listen, I can guarantee you I was a lot more athletic. Then I got the appendectomy and gained all the weight back. So, like, that's the thing, you know, whatever that's worth to you as well, social. So, and real quick in the comments, why Dakra, finally, I see this legendary duo live. Hey, listen,
legendary.
You guys are the legends in here with all these awesome comments here tonight. This is great. You divers, man. Listen.
Storm. Always the LaQuint Allen conversation is always great, man. Because that dude like to fight. LaQuint Allen is a stone cold of this roster. Stone Cold Steve Austin, that is. Just so
that's correct.
Know. He'd run out on that field and hit people with chairs if it helped the Jags win games. This is gonna be like the Black History Month of fight all over again. Oh Jesus, that's great. LaQuint Allen likes to fight, and I think these guys have to respect that man in that locker room because that's where it's at. You need that edge, and he gives it every dang day, every dang practice. Oh man,
2 bears, 3 bears, 6 bears. I'm shortening it because I don't want to take too long. Anyways, oh man, we're at the hour mark, and we could probably this is one of those that could have become a dang terrestrial radio show in last 4 hours. Y'all are on fire today. But Travis D. Holmes. It's that time to tell the people where you can be found.
Man, you already know. BigCatCountry.com. You can find me on all the socials, also on Travis D. Holmes. So if you're looking for the written material covering the Jaguars, definitely head over to Big Cat Country and save it as your favorites. Again, shout out to all the friends of the pod who also have their own writing outlets out there. Dan Griffiths over at Action Sports Jax is one of the main, I guess, guys who writes, if that makes sense. And a lot of friends of the pod. So if I'm forgetting some people, I'm not even going to start naming.
It came in the comments today, and we mentioned
That's true. That's true. There you go.
And,
there you go. Locked On. There you go. The Locked On crew. But overall, man, you know, it's Travis D. Holmes on all the socials. It's BigCatCountry.com. If you're listening to me right now on the audio side, please rate and review us. It helps us out tremendously. It don't cost you no money. It's just your time. That's it. Click your fingers.
Is it cost you no money? But if you hit that subscribe button or you become a member, it gives us money so I can do stuff to help Travis do great things. There you go. I can't put it any better than that. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the SOTG. Check out my work covering UCF football and basketball with Locked On UCF and UCF Night Zone, and also the Storm Surge podcast debuts tomorrow night as we cover the inaugural season of the Orlando Storm in the UFL. Me and my guy, Brian Paul. Make sure you take out any of those things. I already know what you're talking about, Travis. Go for it.
You know. I mean, PJ in the chat. We appreciate you, bro. Channel member with the gift of $199. What game we linking up at this season? Hey, if you come into a game, bro, all of them. Like, we can talk about it. But I've seen PJ at 2 games this season so far, I believe, if not 3. If you guys are at the stadium,
I'd have to make the tailgate and then do the man in the van thing to do the post game for the Duval Dive Live. But that's something we can work out logistically. I'll take some lashes from the wife and make that happen. That's fine.
Yeah, so Duval Dive listeners, if you guys see me on the streets, like, say hi. Don't be strangers. Like, come on, like, this family. If you're a Tennessee Titans fan, like PJ bringing them Tennessee Titans fans to the stadium, they won't do that. But I ain't gonna fight. I promise. We civilized people. But yeah, come say hi. Stop by the tailgate. We can hang out, talk, and everything. Guys, I try to get there hours beforehand so we can truly see what folks are talking about and have a blast, man. So yes, once the schedule drops, we will decide. As PJ just states in the comment, love the earlier show.
We got to see the schedule first. And quickly for Reyes, love the earlier show. Not that staying up past 9 isn't worth it for you guys. To be honest, Reyes, we prefer the earlier shows, but sometimes life be lifing.
Life be life. We have guests whose schedules can't make it, and we really want to get them on that week, and we'll figure it out.
Which, I mean, we got some good guests lined up here pretty soon. There's going to be a 9 o'clock next week, but I can guarantee you the dude that Travis has lined up is going to be worthwhile. So
you're going to want to be live in the comments for that one. Just trust me.
No doubt. Don't worry. The hints will be out there in the socials. We're just going to tease you all lightly for now. So I think we've done enough house cleaning here to get everything going with the announcements and all that. So for all you divers, man, listen, you scuba diving in the comments, you're certified. That's awesome. For my personal champion, Travis T. Holmes, it's Kyle Nash, student of the game. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.